This is lecture number 2 in the field of basics of physiological psychology. Now we get to really have some serious fun here. Hopefully you're detecting the sarcasm in my voice. Now we're going to go over kind of some information in Chapter 2. Thankfully, not all the information in Chapter 2, but the field that we're going to talk about is neuroanatomy. Neuroanatomy is the focus of what are the structures in the brain and what kind of behaviors do they control. We're going to kind of give you the Reader's Digest condensed version of this. If you look on your agenda or general outline here, you can see I've attached some handouts that kind of provide some more information about the brain and behavior. Page 56 has some pictures. What I'm basically going to do is give you a little overview of the different areas of the brain. I'd like you to know what some of these structures are and what they do, and I'm going to spend hopefully no more than 5 to 7 minutes on this one because memorizing all the parts of the body or other parts of the brain and what they do and what they control is really, really exciting, I'm sure. So anyway, let's go for it here. The brain is basically divided into 3 general areas. We've got the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. So what I'm basically going to do is share with you some of the structures in each of these areas that are more important, tell you what they are and what they do, and that'll wrap it up. So figure 2.17 on page 56, or the first of the handouts there, the hindbrain. Now there are a lot of structures in the hindbrain. Key structures for the purpose of this class. We have in the hindbrain the cerebellum. The cerebellum is that big bump on the back of your head. It's the largest single structure in your brain. So think about this just for a second. The largest single structure in your brain, it actually has, well, I'm not sure how many neurons, but it has more neurons than any other structure. It is concerned with movement. It is concerned with movement. If you think about humans and their ability to have motion and move and walk and talk, all sorts of types of movement is what the cerebellum controls. So for example, let's say for the sake of example, you go out and you want to test how your cerebellum is working, and it's a Saturday, which it is right now. It's a Saturday night and you're not 50 years old. You're a little younger than that. You decide you want to go out to a bar. Well, you go out to a bar, you drink some alcohol. Well, you're testing your cerebellum. Because if you are asked to walk outside the bar and walk in a straight line and you can't, that's because alcohol is working in your cerebellum. I think you get what I'm saying here. So the idea is your cerebellum is mostly composed of neurons that help for motoric function, especially walking. Another structure in your hindbrain is called the pons. The pons is basically in control of sleeping, awake, being awake, and arousal. So it's kind of your sleep-wake center. When you wake up in the morning, there's some structures in your pons that really get activated in a major way. When you go to sleep at night, your pons is also at work. So we have the cerebellum, we have the pons, and then the medulla, or as my wife likes to say, the medulla oblongata, because of course it's a little oblong. So the medulla, I like to think of the medulla as kind of the 7 dwarfs area of the brain. Sneezy, well, actually it's just sneezy in there, but sneezing, throwing up, all the basic breathing reflexes, gag reflexes, that your medulla is basically in control of a lot of breathing, heart rate, that your medulla basically controls a lot of these important centers of your brain, if you will. So the medulla is basically in charge of respiration, heart rate, sneezing, vomiting, salivation, coughing, so all these kind of basic level functions. So that's the medulla. So if somebody wrecks your medulla, you're in a lot of trouble. So these are the 3 structures of the hindbrain that I will ask you to know. As you can see from your book, there are many more, but hey, we're in the ADP version of this course. Next area, the midbrain. A couple of key structures in the midbrain for you. One key structure in the midbrain is, what do we got? The substantia nigra. The substantia nigra translates into black area, and as it turns out, the substantia nigra has a lot of a neurochemical in it called dopamine. And it turns out that the substantia nigra is also very important in movement. When people get Parkinson's disease, we find that this structure of the brain gets wrecked. So the substantia nigra has a a lot of the neurons that are responsible for Parkinson's disease and movement. A second structure in there is the superior colliculus. The superior colliculus is actually in charge of tracking movement. So if somebody is walking around a room and you're trying to track them, it's because their superior colliculus is following how they're going. Another structure in there, actually, I didn't put one of the important ones, but I will try to add it in there. The inferior colliculus is in charge of some parts of listening. Auditory information is that. There's actually one other key structure as well. Let's see if you can look this one up. Hopefully it is somewhere in there. It's a structure called the periaqueductal gray. I hope that one is mentioned somewhere. It looks like it's in the handout, the periaqueductal gray on page 1 of 6. This is the area of your brain that has a lot of endorphins in it. Endorphins. The endorphins are in charge of pain and pleasure. So when you feel pain or pleasure, the endorphins are in this area. It's called the periaqueductal gray because it's basically a fluid-based area, or it's the area right near your cerebral aqueduct, the fluid in your brain. It's very close to that, periaqueductal, and it looks gray. So those are the key structures of the midbrain. Let's continue on with our trip here on this fantastic voyage, if we shall, to the next structure, which is going to be the forebrain. The forebrain is separated into two areas. One are your cerebral cortex, or your lobes. The other is considered the subcortical area. In the cerebral cortex, we have 4 lobes. You may be familiar with them. Let me name them for you and let you know what they do. We have the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is concerned with basically higher cognitive functioning. Higher cognitive functioning. It also has an area for movement in it as well, for speech. The frontal cortex controls speech. Another structure in the forebrain, in the cerebral cortex, is the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is in charge of touch, the sensation of touch. For example, how do you know when you put something on your tongue exactly where that substance is? Well, it's because the parietal lobe basically has a map to all areas of touch in your body. And these areas of touch basically go back to your brain and they can tell you exactly where something is. So the parietal lobe is in charge of touch. What do we have next there? We have the occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is in charge of vision. So all areas of vision kind of at the back of your brain, and then the temporal lobe is in charge of hearing and acoustic information. So those are the lobes, if you will. The other key area in your forebrain is right below the cerebral cortex. It's called the subcortical area, below the cortex. And there are a couple of important structures there for you. The first one is the hippocampus. And you should be able to find a picture of the hippocampus. The hippocampus, what does the hippocampus do? Wait, I forgot. Wait, the hippocampus is involved with memory. Ha ha ha. The hippocampus is very much involved with memory. When people get Alzheimer's disease, we see losses in hippocampal neurons. The amygdala. The amygdala is considered your emotion center of the brain. So aggression and anxiety. There's a lot of receptors in this area for aggression and anxiety. And of course, the thalamus is very important. The thalamus, which is another structure, when all this acoustic information and visual information comes up to your brain, the thalamus is the relay station. So it'll send information to other structures in your brain. And finally, the hypothalamus. Right below the thalamus, the hypothalamus basically helps control your glands and your body. Eating, drinking, sexuality. It works with your endocrine system to basically make sure that basic functioning happens. There's a lot of connections between the hypothalamus and even the medulla that we talked about before. So these are the structures of your brain. I'm sure this is really, really exciting for you. Basically, if you want to make a little outline here with the structures, where are they and what they do, that would be sufficient. Thank you. Bye-bye.